What's going on, guys? This is the 5 Year Pass back with another episode talking about the weekend. Very eventful weekend. But before that, my name is Sudi and this is Sham, and we're gonna just talk you through the weekend of some crazy results, in my opinion, and just sets the table up to the first point we wanted to make very quickly. Brighton played Crystal Palace today. They win, they go top. I mean, look, you didn't say they're going to win the league, but you did say if they score, it'll be a very, very different season for Brighton.
Yeah,
And I think Brighton's goal this season as well is to probably stay in. It takes a couple of years to kind of solidify yourself as a team playing between 12, let's say 12 to 15th position. I think they're still battling relegation this year, but they win this, they go 17, so they've got basically a third of the points they need to get to stay up. In October, not even October. So I think that's a huge achievement.
yeah, absolutely. And they did quite well in terms of not conceding too many. They just had trouble scoring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Their big striker was Malpai that they brought in. I don't think he had a great season last year. I think he got about 8 goals.
yeah,
But it's his first season in England, and that can be an adjustment. So if he starts doing a bit better, it might just make them all walk a bit taller and all do a little bit better. They were not far
yeah,
away from having quite a good season. They had a good season, but they were not far away from having a really good season last year.
yeah.
I don't expect them to make Europe or anything, but I'd
No.
love to see them nick a sort of top half spot.
Mm,
Ninth and tenth at the moment are Arsenal and Tottenham. Why can't they beat
yeah.
Arsenal or Tottenham and get ahead of them?
Yeah, it's very interesting because they lost arguably one of the most influential players at the back with Ben White, and you kind of think, oof, you said there they're not going to concede, they aren't going to concede many, but I think there were questions asked at the start of the season. They've answered them all, man, and they go top, not game in hand, not by goal difference, purely on points, and it's a huge achievement. I think Brighton, the fans, if they do it tonight, they got to enjoy it for the week that it does last. And
Yeah.
who knows, it could last for a couple of weeks before they drop back down again. But yeah, look, we'll get on to more meatier things. I wanted to start off with Arsenal Spurs. I think the talking point in this, there's two major talking points. Arsenal's obviously found a bit of momentum, and that's really nice to see. They seem a bit more of an optimistic club going into this season at the moment to where Spurs was, let's say, 3 games ago. And it's just kind of the whole thing shifted, and Arsenal's looking much better. I mean, talk us through, man. I think Spurs just look bad.
Spurs look absolutely terrible, but you got to give credit to Arsenal. I saw
Yeah,
that Man City game, and 5-0 was the most predictable scoreline that you could
yeah,
possibly have envisaged for that game. They were just
yeah,
absolutely terrible. But Arteta he'd signed a lot of players. Not a lot of them were playing. There's definitely need for cultural change there. I still don't know why Granit Xhaka's still around. I don't know,
mm,
but he played well against Tottenham. They really controlled that party. Odegaard and Xhaka seemed to really control that midfield and control the way that the game was played. They're
mhm,
looking solid at the back. They were actually fairly solid last year. They had a fairly good defensive record. They just gave away really weak, shitty goals. There was one game where one centre back, I think it might have even been Xhaka, passed it straight to the Burnley player and it hit the Burnley player and went in. Like in the six
yeah,
yard box. Like they gave away stupid goals. It
yeah.
was more about finding a fire and a punch up front, and that mentality. That was what was missing of Arsenal. But from the start of the game to when they were 3-0 up, they were all over Tottenham. That was
Mm.
that was really, when you think of Arsene Wenger and his better days at that club, the Henri Perez Vieira days, it didn't look much different to that. The way they swarm forward, the way they cut back for the guy to run in and score, like it was just
Yeah.
really nice football to see.
I think as well, the little bit of a caveat, I don't want to take too much away from them, is that this is the North London derby. Form kind of goes out the window a little bit. The way, yeah, I guess you know what I'm trying to say. I think that has to be taken into account a little bit, but they look very solid, man. I think going forward, I didn't think Odegaard was a good fit for Arsenal after watching the last 2 games. I'm
Mm.
starting to change my mind a little bit. Um, you talked about Shaka. I just want to say this point. I think some players are symptomatic of a really bad time at a club. They may not necessarily be a bad player, but I think they just bring an energy the way Fellaini maybe did, kind of symptomatic of that whole Moyes, Van
I
Gaal,
was thinking of Lucas at Liverpool.
Lucas at
He
Liverpool would be
came in, he
another
was
one. I
just a
think,
bit young, started badly. Everyone got on his case. He actually had a good Liverpool career and did well when
yeah,
he left. He went to Lazio and did quite well.
well,
But he was
yeah,
sort of
he's still there.
emblematic of that time when Liverpool
Yeah,
was struggling a bit.
exactly. I think that's a perfect point, and I think Fellaini would be a similar. He's a good player. He's got some important goals, but he's just. And I think as well, Arsenal is kind of starting to see like we need a bit more of a unit. We're looking less as superstars. I think Aubameyang might be the last of the superstars that they buy Absolutely right, and I hope to see. I mean, who they're playing this week? I don't think is it international break. I've got a they
No,
got
it
they got
won't be an
Brighton on
international
Sunday.
break.
They got
Arsenal
Brighton on
this.
Sunday.
Yeah,
So they play league leaders Brighton, potentially league leaders Brighton. So they no, they look. I'm just looking at the next few games: Brighton, Villa, Crystal Palace. I think that's how far maybe they're going to look.
yeah.
Um, and it's not looking terrible for Arsenal. I mean, I got to say, I knew they were. I think everyone knew they were going to come out of that form, and I think what people didn't take into account was you are right. They got a lot of players missing, and I think they've ridden that wave, and I think it's going to be good, generally good results from now
I
on.
like that. I like that they've gone and bought young players in. They didn't play a lot of those young guys when they got smacked in those first three games. Um,
Yeah.
Arsenal, like even sort of my comparison is always that Wenger era. Like a lot of
Mm,
those guys that they brought in were young players who are unknown. They just all happened to be from France at that time. You know,
mm,
Thierry Henry was an underachiever. No one had heard of Robert Perez.
mm.
Patrick Vieira had done
Sylvie
well in
Wiltord.
France, but could he play in England? You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas these guys are sort of that generation. I like the Japanese centre back who's playing right back. I
Yeah.
forgot his name, but he looks good.
Tomiyasu something.
I
Yeah.
had questions over whether Emil Smith Rowe could play with Odegaard, but it seems to be okay. Good footballers
Mm,
generally figure out how to play with each other, so I think they'll sort it out. But there's
yeah.
some good signs there. No need to get carried away. But they've
Yeah.
won their last three, and that's
Mm.
it's not too bad.
So it's more than you can say for United. Let's shift on to Chelsea, Man City. I texted you 2 minutes before the game, and I said you just know Chelsea's going to batter Man City, and it was honestly the complete opposite. Tuchel just didn't have an answer for the changes, the way he did against Spurs. He just didn't. Chelsea just couldn't seem to get the game in control at all. Given that they played a full strength side, I don't think anyone's giving excuses for the types of plays they played. But Guardiola comes top again, and there was the thing that for me was kind of the trademark of the game was constant screw, like just turning the screw pressure the way Man City have done in the past. I think they played very, very well. They're looking good, man.
They pressed very well, and
Yeah,
it was funny that Guardiola went from playing no number six to having almost two number sixes. They sort of play with that double pivot, and it allowed them to time and sort of bit like when United beat City last season. They had McTominay and Fred, and they kept pressing Chelsea further and further back. Um,
mm,
Chelsea, because of that formation that they've got, they actually played two more defensive centre midfielders who were dropping back a bit. The
hmm
problem with when you do that is you've already got wing backs and three centre backs, so you've got this big gap between centre mid and those two roaming number tens that they play behind Lukaku. Those too big
mm,
a gap, and City with the double pivot just controlled that game. And like you said, it just felt a bit like a screw, like they were just increasing the pressure. I thought 1-0
yeah,
flattered Chelsea. I thought City
big
could have
time.
won
Yeah,
by more. Um,
yeah,
and City were really good for that win. Nice to see Jesus score. I don't think he's a long term number nine for City. He actually played on the right in this game with
mm,
Foden in the false nine. I still think City will need a striker. Not necessarily to win the league, but I just think the way that the team is, you've got to have that sort of fox in the box option. If you're goal down, you need to bring someone on who can get you cheap goals.
yeah,
And this game is even a good example of that. If they had Aguero, they might have won that 4-0. You just
yeah.
put away a couple of chances that other players couldn't. So they still need that player, but great team performance. And not a lot of people expected them to get anything out of this game, and they were by far the better team.
Yeah, it's interesting the way De Bruyne is playing now. He's playing very much a Paul Scholes position. I think Rodri, man, any player who tucks their shirt in and plays number six is not to be fucked with. Lee Cattermole, Roy Keane, sorry, and Rodri. But he plays. He's outstanding. He's quite young still. I think he's like 24 or 25. Um, just the calmness on the ball. It's rare to see. The way he controls that midfield, and he works really well with De Bruyne because he kind of gives De Bruyne that freedom, and De Bruyne him sitting, I think, gives as well Foden, Grealish, and who played on the right, Jesus, obviously, give that freedom to do what they want. And as well, Foden seems to be brought on for a very specific task. I don't think he obviously doesn't play every single game, and he seems to be brought on. He seems to do these very specific roles for Pep, and I wonder, is this something he's going to be satisfied with? Is this something he's going to develop into a full time player, a full time first team player? You'd think the latter. I'm just curious as to what sort of player he's going to become. Because
It's
once Guardiola leaves, Guardiola has said he's going to leave at the end of next season, I guess. Yeah, the end of next season.
when his
What
contract
does Phil
expires.
Foden?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said he's done. I think he's probably going to go try and win a World Cup, which he will. But
It'll be
yeah, no,
interesting.
I'm curious about Foden and the future of his career.
Yeah, just on Guardiola quickly. I wonder if the whole thing with the City fans kind of got to him a bit. There was that very self-righteous Man City supporter on getting
Yeah,
very pedantic about verbiage on the Sky Sports. That was pretty poor.
yeah,
They should be not that they should bow down to Guardiola, but they should be thankful that they won squat before he arrived, and he's won 3 league championships in 5 years.
yeah,
But they don't like if a manager tells you to come to the game, come. Shut up and just
yeah,
come.
yeah,
But the thing is about Foden, people forget he's only like 22, so he's
yeah,
got a
yeah.
lot of good football ahead of him, and I think it'll be there are players similar to him that are a bit older. Like I think when De Bruyne goes, the team's going to start being built around Foden. I think that's
Okay.
probably where he'll go. He will probably play as a forward rather than an eight. He's if you play like a 4-2-3-1, he can play anywhere across the three. I think more
Mm.
so the center and the right. But I think that will come with the new manager. But for Foden now, it's really about just doing well when he gets those opportunities, and he's taking every chance that he gets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, no, go on, go on. It's fine.
I say he's 22 in one of the best. He's seen us one cycle of one of the best teams that's maybe ever been. So yeah, no, that's a fair point actually, because he's a mercurial talent, and it's almost like saying where does Messi play? Like, oh, Messi plays anywhere, anywhere
Yeah.
after the halfway line. I think Foden is in that mold where where does he play? He plays everywhere. I'm just curious. I am curious to see, does he do bet? Does he do well under another manager? Does he become a rogue? Does he, it's very interesting because I think someone like him needs to be nurtured well, needs to be kind of put blinders on him a little bit. When you talk about that Greenwood Foden mishap last year, we all know that Foden was kind of the instigator, and Greenwood's kind of suffered a bit more from it. But yeah, I really like him. There's no criticism of him. I'm just very curious as to how he can fit long term into this team. And I think you're right, that kind of right wing number 10, but very much a free role position.
The other
Yeah,
thing I wanted to say, sorry, because you mentioned about Rodri, Guardiola
yeah,
always says that six role in a 4-3-3 is the most important position.
yeah,
And what happens in English football a lot is English players like moving the ball and having a high tempo and playing as fast as they can. That ability to hold the ball is quite often what costs England at major tournaments. Other teams like holding the ball really more. I remember talking about the Euro final with you and Jorginho's ability to hold the ball under pressure and then just hit very small sideways passes that just got. He took all the pressure and then sucked it out of the game, and he did that a
mm.
lot in the sort of second half of the first half. So Rodri's a bit like that. He can suck
No,
pressure
he's
out of the
exactly
game.
like that. He's
He can
exactly
hold
like
the
that.
ball, and then find guys who are free.
Yeah,
So Guardiola always loves that. He's even brought back Fernandinho for an extra year just because he knows the importance of that position. He'll go and try
yeah.
and find another six, but he's just
Mm.
keeping Fernandinho around. But very much Fernandinho and Rodri were quite equal last year. Fernandinho, with his age, has come down a bit, and Rodri's just getting a bit more used to England. So he's
Yeah.
just gone up a bit.
Yeah, man. Like I think he's going to be immense. Like if he goes to have the meat of his career in City, he could be immense. And I think the best player I've ever seen in that position. People talk about Scholes, but I think the best player I've ever seen in that six or plays in that tempo. Maybe not necessarily a six, but that creates tempo for the team is Tony Cruz. If you go watch Tony Cruz for Madrid in those Champions League years, he just sucks the pressure in.
Mm.
And the difference
Pirlo
between
did
him
that
and
as well. I was thinking Andre Pirlo when you said that.
yeah, but I guess yeah, Perlo is an entity by himself. He's not human. But yeah, no, absolutely. Let's shift on to I thought was maybe the result of the weekend. Arguably, Brentford taking on Liverpool, man, 3-0, and scoring first. What a result! What a
Oh,
result for
they had a
them. And
massive crack, didn't they, Brentford?
yeah, they did
And good on
big
them
time.
because it's easy to get intimidated by Liverpool. But if you're Brentford, why do you go to the Premier League? Because you want to play Liverpool, like
Yeah,
so good
exactly.
on them for just taking it on. That game could have gone absolutely anywhere. If either of those teams had won, you go, well, you know what? That's the Premier League. That's the type
Mm-hmm.
of game that makes the Premier League the most exciting league in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Just absolutely chaotic. Liverpool looked very good going forward. They looked a bit shaky at the back. Allison in particular, not that he played badly. I just felt that he lacked that presence and assurance we normally sort of assume of him. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he just looked a bit mortal rather than looking
Mm-hmm.
like the immortal that he was when he first came to England. So I'm not
Let's
saying it's on him. I'm just saying that was one of my observations from the game that he just didn't seem quite himself.
I, I wanted to talk about specifically Jordan Henderson, and I think we kind of forgot him last season a bit. He went into centre back, missed with a bit of injury, as many Liverpool players did. One of the most important players Liverpool have on and off the pitch, captain, blah blah blah. What I like about John Henderson is he came from a place where he was in that George Gillette era of the shit transfers, and he's just become amazing. I want you to talk about what you thought of him on Saturday, because we had a little conversation about it.
Yeah, I mean, he was minutes away from leaving the club, wasn't he? Like Liverpool had done an exchange with Fulham for Clint Dempsey, the American player,
Yeah,
and Henderson
yeah,
goes, "No, I'm not leaving."
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
So he
yeah.
was very close
20,
to leaving the club, because people were turning on him a bit because he was not Steven Gerrard, poor fella. But he's sort of he's a poor man's Gerrard, but that's a very high bar. I mean, Gerrard
yeah.
is an all time great, but I thought that he's finding these pockets of space, a bit like De Bruyne, sort of in those inside right channels. He had a great cross for the first goal. He's got that sort of
Mhm,
swerve and dip, that sort of boom that you get, that
mhm,
sort of bend it like Beckham style dip. I've seen it in Trent and I've seen it in De Bruyne. And Henderson's finding spaces out a bit higher. It might
mhm,
be a change in Liverpool's play because, as good as Trent is, if you only have one option there, other teams can read it. So if you've got that second option of Henderson, and if those two can work together, it just makes Liverpool a bit more unpredictable and much more of an attacking threat. Henderson had to play as a six and as a centre back a lot last year with the centre backs out, but he's being released into that eight role. And without Wijnaldum around, you suspect of the two eights that they'll play. So they'll play Fabinho in the six and have two eights, and he's the senior one. He's the captain and he's the better player. So he's getting that license to get involved with attacks more, which is kind
yeah,
of the
and
play. It was kind of the player that everyone thought he would be. He's
mhm,
almost as if he's gone into himself and figured out what type of footballer he is, and he's now expanding out again and becoming
mhm.
that sort of all action type player that everybody assumed that he would become.
Yeah, because I think people early on labeled him as, if he was ever going to be something good, it'd be a water carrier. And I think now he has become a better footballer. Again, 5, 6 years ago, I didn't think he'd become a better footballer. I just thought he'd become a better player, if that makes sense, a hardworking, a better team player. But he's become a very, very good footballer. I think Curtis Jones has now stepped into that. Okay, I'm going to run 3 steps for every 1 step you're running, because I think you've got to pay your dues a little bit as well. You've got to show the manager that you can run about and keep the ball, and that allows Fabinho to be high IQ in that number six, allows Henderson to do a bit more um, creative stuff, I guess, which maybe we didn't know he was capable of. We knew he could knock a pass, but did we know his movement, the way he could whip a ball in for the first goal?
The,
I
the
liked
one
him, man.
the one sort of knock on Liverpool has been that those eights don't create a lot. They rely a lot more than other teams on their Robertson
On the
and Henderson,
wings, yeah, yeah.
Alexander-Arnold and Robertson to get up and create. So if they can
Hmm.
find more creativity in those two eight positions, it makes them much more threatening. That's why Harvey Elliott
Hmm.
was very interesting. Curtis Jones, you mentioned him, got a good goal on the weekend. You
Yeah,
know, and almost losing Wijnaldum, because I thought that was that was a really bad thing for Liverpool to lose him.
yeah.
But it's almost as if it's created more options for them. They've become less reliant on him. I mean, he started every game last season.
Mm.
He was a mainstay in that team, but it's created options and opportunities for them to try different things, and they're looking better going forward as a result.
Yeah, yeah. And just quickly on Brentford as well, I think they've had a crack this season, man. I think this kind of attitude and approach to games, they're ninth in the table, scored 8, conceded 5, decent return. United have conceded as much, for example. Um, if you have a sense of it, do you think they have anything to fear for relegation with the way they're going?
Brentford. The interesting thing is they've got 3 draws in 6 games,
Mm.
which means that they're hard to beat. And
Mm.
typically, teams that are hard to beat will not go down. It's your
Mm.
ability to turn losses into draws that saves you from relegation.
Mm.
Um, so I think in that sense, I think they will come back to the mean in terms of they will drop down the table. I think it's a bit high for where they are. Do I think they need to be worried about relegation if they can keep drawing games and not losing them? Because if they lost to Liverpool, everyone would have gone, you know what, Brentford tried hard, but they lost. But they've got a point there where no one would have expected them to get a point. So if they can keep doing that, they'll be safe.
Yeah, I guess just mathematically speaking, if they get those points, yeah, where you're not expecting, you get, let's say, against United in a few weeks, they get another point, and maybe they lose to Newcastle. They've got those points against big teams, and it kind of takes the pressure off a little bit in the future. But like at the rate they're going, I think they will revert to the mean a little bit. But yeah, no, I have to say, I think just that Norwich and Burnley are just terrible. As who was it last season? That was just so bad.
Sheffield
Was
United.
West Brom?
Yeah.
Was West Brom? Oh, Sheffield. Yeah, that's right. Just so bad.
The thing with
But anyway,
Brentford, though, I'll just say quickly, the next 3 games are West Ham, Chelsea, and Leicester. So we could be talking very differently about them in 3 weeks.
if they get 2 points out of this three, I think they've done well. Honestly, I think 2 points out of the 9. Yeah, look, if they get 3, if they get a win out of this, that's even better. I think Leicester's is probably the weak link in those 3. If I had to pick one,
Leicester
Just not
are
having-
very much underperforming this year. They've just lost that spunk up front. They're looking a
Yeah.
little fragile with. I think that injury to Fofana, that would have really affected them at the club. They've got
Yeah.
Vestergaard, who's a good player, but Fofana, like we had Niels on here, and he was really positive on Fofana, and
Yeah.
21-year-old classy athletic French centre back. It's a big loss, and the manner of the injury was a shit tackle.
Yeah,
It was an absolutely shit tackle by that Villa. I think it was a Villarreal player.
yeah. No, just on 2 seconds on Leicester. I do think Rodgers is the right man for the job. I think this is his first kind of, maybe his first real test in terms of rebuilding. He couldn't quite catch a break at Liverpool that season. He got fired with Suarez leaving, and Sturridge just wasn't scoring. I think the Leicester owners are sensible enough not to fire him and give him the time. I think he will get it. But like
it would be interesting.
It's going to be a rocky road for Leicester this year, I think.
Yeah, I mean they've had a couple of very up years. If this was a down year, then you just have to accept that was the case.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're in danger of getting relegated or anything.
No.
Interestingly, because you just mentioned Rodgers, I wonder if they swapped 2021 Rodgers with 2014 Rodgers. I wonder if he could have got Liverpool over the line to win the title. It'd be interesting. Be very interesting.
What do you mean?
Because
this
Liverpool
Rodgers now.
in 2014 when Steve Gerrard slipped over. If Brendan Rodgers from 2021 was managing that team in the latter stages of that season, could he have got them over the line? Because the only knock on Rodgers at that time was kind of a lack of experience. It was his first sort of real title chase in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Maybe he'd get them over the line this time.
Yeah, lots of managers say that. I think Rodgers might agree. Things were going so well for Liverpool. It was hard to, you kind of get decision paralysis almost, and like things are just a little bit off. Okay, no, the next game will be better, and it just kind of, the slide was just so fast and so.
It was really just 5 points, wasn't it? It was that game against Chelsea where Steve Gerrard slipped. Poor thing. Like I really wanted him to win a Premier League title, even if he's from Liverpool. And then that sort of what I call the reverse Istanbul at Crystal Palace. Yeah.
No, it's called Cristanbul.
Cristanbul, yeah. So that Crystal Palace result, it was funny because I remember seeing Rodgers after the game and he was like, because they had a game and they were equal games with City, and then they both had to play a catch-up fixture. So it was like 3 days before the end of the season. And Chelsea City were playing the night before. So Liverpool were like, they'd drawn that game, got 1 point, moved 1 point clear of City. And Rodgers is like, we're supposed to be celebrating. There's a game left and we've gone top of the table. But we know if City win tomorrow night, we've lost the league. And that's what happened as it transpired. But it was pretty brutal. That's the nature of the Premier League. You just pardon the pun, but you can't afford to slip up.
I mean, is the game you're in, as they say, is the game you're in. I think I'm going to leave it there, Sham. Pleasure as always. It's a cracking weekend. One more weekend before the internationals. It's exciting, man. Like Brighton could take over this. Brighton could top the league at the end of tonight, and who fucking knows what will happen next week. But I'm here for it. You're here for it. 5 Yard Pass is here for it. So I think we'll end it there. Guys, thanks so much for watching. We are the 5 Yard Pass podcast. My name is Sudi, and this is Sham. Keep football simple, and as always,
keep passing, guys.
Cheers.